Hey everyone.
Hello.
I'm Zoe.
I'm Nick.
And we are the creators of Codecademy's latest course, Learn C#. Nick, what are we going to do on the live stream today?
Today we're going to walk through one of the lessons that we made. We're going to talk about generally what C# is, what you can do with it, why you should or shouldn't be learning it. And then we're going to talk about a little competition that we're going to have with all of you for the chance to win some Codecademy swag.
Awesome. So how can we get to the lesson that we see right behind us here?
Okay, so if you're watching this, then you are probably on YouTube, which probably looks like this. And there we are. And okay. All right. Then I'm going to hurry before I blow my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
stay focused, Nick.
Yeah,
Come on.
Okay. You're in the live stream. You go down to Code Along with Us here. And then you click this link, which will be the first link on the description of the YouTube page. And this is where we'll be working. So we're going to share our screen, what it looks like for us, and you can follow along if you'd like.
Exactly.
What we're actually going to start with first is not this project. That's the competition. We'll get into that. We're going to talk about the lesson first. So within this project, you click this link, you go here. So I'll do that one more time. From the live stream, Code Along with Us here. You're going to need this page that's open, and you're also going to need the first link in that page. And I've opened a million tabs. Okay.
Awesome. And while we're going through the lesson, we'll also be keeping our eyes on the chat. So if you have any questions about the C# course, about C# in general, we'll be looking at those and stopping periodically to talk about them more.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you have to say about the course or about your interest in C# or what you already know about C#. We want this to be like a conversation between all of us, and you know, this will influence how we go forward. We're going to be building some more C# stuff, and it makes a huge difference hearing from learners about their experience and what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And back to Nick's point, this is not our full sequence of C# courses just yet. This is just the first two sets of courses, you could say, sets of lessons and quizzes and projects. We've got a couple other ones coming up. We're going to be working on a methods one and a conditionals. So stay tuned for those.
Just a little introduction, if you haven't met us yet from our previous live stream. I am Nick. I'm a curriculum developer here. I've been here for like a year and a half about, and I've developed some TDD material on test-driven development, some SQL stuff, some JavaScript stuff. I've worked on Alexa and Learn How to Code.
Yep, and I'm Zoe. I've been here for almost 2 years now. Nick and I have actually worked on a lot of projects together, or some of the same content. So I also worked on the Learn Alexa course. We built the Learn How to Code course together, and now we're doing C#. So yeah, pretty exciting. Cool.
Hey, hi, Rafael from Brazil. And hey, Josh. Cool. All right, Josh is going to be in the chat. He has been very helpful to us in making this course. He's been kind of our subject matter expert.
Yeah, so Josh is actually on the engineering team here at Codecademy, but he used to work at Microsoft, which is the company that develops C#. So yeah, if you see Josh in the channel, he's here to help us answer some questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, so
should we get started?
Let's get started. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
Okay, so what is C#? I'm not going to read through all of this. I'm going to kind of paraphrase for you. Basically, anything you want to build, anything you can think of, and we'd love to hear what you are thinking of, you can build with C#. So things like interactive websites and mobile apps, VR, AR, you can build back-end services, you build video games. There's all kinds of stuff that's out there in the wild that you can see now that's built with technologies that use C#. So for example, if you ever played Pokemon Go, the mobile game, that was built with Unity. And Unity is something that you can run with C#. And Stack Overflow, if you ever gotten a question, if you ever search for a question on Google, probably the first thing you come up with is Stack Overflow, like a forum where you can answer questions about programming and tech in general. That whole thing was built with C#. And the technology is ASP.NET. You don't have to know those, but the point is, if you know C#, you can build all that stuff.
Absolutely. I actually got my start with C# doing Unity when I was in grad school. I was making some virtual reality apps. Yeah. So I, at the time, was actually looking on Codecademy for a introduction to C# course, and there wasn't one. So it's kind of a great full circle moment to be able to work on this course for past me and future you.
Yeah. So what else can we talk about here? Okay, if you haven't taken other programming languages and you're not familiar with programming, that's okay. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking through a lot of that, and we're happy to take those questions. This live stream is still for you. If you have learned some other programming languages, C# is still really useful for, one, what it can build, like we talked about, but also just learning new programming concepts. Mm-hmm. I have learned as a programmer of like functional, Lisp, object-oriented, static typed, dynamically typed. Not saying this to show off. I'm saying this because I don't use any of them. But they're still really useful, I swear, to making me a better programmer, to think about the concepts behind the implementation. So I could see a feature in a language, and I don't understand it until I've seen it done a lot of ways. Absolutely. And then you see the real concept behind all of the text.
Yeah, like I remember back, I started with learning JavaScript, didn't really get a lot of the underlying programming concepts until I started learning Python, and I was like, oh, okay, now I'm seeing these patterns, seeing similarities between languages. But then even starting to learn C#, that was the first, strongly statically typed language that I learned. And then I'm thinking back to all of those data errors I used to get in Python. I'm like, oh, right, because that was important, but also kind of obscured in a way that it's like very upfront in C#.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've taken Ruby, and we'll compare them to some now. If you've taken Ruby and JavaScript, those are dynamically typed. Basically, when you define a variable and you store data, you don't have to say whether it's a number or a string or it's a true or false concept, anything like that. It figures it out for you. For C#, you have to define that explicitly, and that's called like a type. Assigning a type essentially tells what you can and can't do with that. So like a string, I can take letters out, I can add letters, I can access letters. I can't add and subtract words. That doesn't make sense. That would be for a number data type. And that's helpful because you avoid a whole bunch of errors that you might encounter with Ruby and JavaScript like you were talking about, like Zoe mentioned. And if you've taken something like Java, which is an object-oriented programming language, we also have courses on that. On Codecademy, that is going to look pretty similar to C#. When I say object-oriented, I mean everything is grouped into separate objects that handle their own, basically, group of concerns and allows you to keep your code very organized and maintainable. Yeah.
I actually heard a story that one of the reasons that C# was developed was because Microsoft wanted a version of Java, but Oracle was like, no, it's ours. And so they're like, fine, we're going to build our own version and make it better.
And in the end, everything became open source.
Everything became open source.
The people spoke.
Yeah, and now we even have TypeScript, which is adding types to JavaScript. So
exactly.
Another Microsoft project.
I'm going to take a quick look here before we move on. Hi, Ashik from Bangladesh. And what else? What other questions we got here?
Oh, some questions about artificial intelligence libraries. That's super interesting.
Okay.
It looks like Hayden is on it.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, there's a lot more information on what you can build on the Microsoft documentation. Generally, yeah, if you can think about it, if you can imagine it, you can build it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let us know if there's something you find that you can't build.
And hey, Talabi, you can definitely do C# as a beginner. We wrote this course to be beginner friendly, but also, not super slow enough for people who already know programming languages to feel like they're dragging their feet. But we go in, we explain all the basic programming concepts and walk you through stuff. So definitely can take it as a beginner.
Yeah. Okay. So with that said, move on.
All right. So if you're familiar with Codecademy courses, you know that the bulk of our instruction takes place in this learning environment that you see here. And what's great about the learning environment is that you get to write code in it, and then we run tests against it to check if your code is correct. So this is basically what most exercises in the C# course are going to look like. So we're just going to kind of break down some parts of it. So in here, in this file program.cs, we've got a lot of stuff going on. And I'm just going to tell you right away, you can ignore it. We're not going to get into, it's just not important for right now. And I can know as a beginner, that can seem really intimidating. You're like, what's this for? What does it do? Just only focus on stuff in the static void main method right there. There. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to be focusing on for these first initial lessons. We'll get into the namespace and class syntax stuff later in the courses, so don't worry about that for now. So, true to most introductory courses for learning a new language, we have a hello world statement. And so in this program, we are going to be printing the phrase hello world to our console. And the console is this black empty mass right here. So again, if you're familiar with other programming languages, usually you have some kind of print command, and then you have a string, which is denoted by text in quotation marks, inside of maybe like parentheses or something like that. So in C#, our command is console.writeLine, and then our phrase hello world. So let's see what happens. We're going to press the run button down here.
All right, well.
Well, no, this is great. It's
Yeah.
a good start. So as you can see, if we run it, we get hello world printed to the console. But what I didn't do was look at the actual instructions. So if we scroll down, we can see that we're supposed to change the text to print your own name to the console. Here's our interactive LE in action. So I'm going to change this bit of text to my name. So I can type Zoe right in here, and I'm going to press run. And now the error goes away, and my name is on the console. Just some other quick things to note. This, again, may look familiar if you've programmed in something like Java or JavaScript, but we want to make sure that we're paying specific attention to, how our brackets are. We don't have to care too much about white space, but, we want to make our code neat and readable, so we're tabbing over a little, and ending every single line with a semicolon. This is not JavaScript, folks. If you leave out the semicolon, you will have an error. Strict.
So this black part over here, you called it a console. I've heard it called a terminal before.
Yeah, so that's a really great point, Nick. Typically, I'd call it a terminal, and that's because I'm a Mac user. And so depending on what operating system you're using, in Macs, it's usually called a terminal, and in Windows machines, it's usually called a console. So since we are working with a you could say Windows shop language, it's used for building Windows application, throughout the lesson we'll actually be calling this space a console. Same thing as a terminal.
Yeah, and the point is, when we're using this command, console.writeLine, we're putting some text on the console, which you can see on the right there. Yeah.
Cool. Shall we move on to our next
Let's
one?
move on. Let's
All
do it.
right.
Okay. So we gave some output, now we're going to get input. You can see in this little GIF over there what it's going to look like at the end. I'm not going to run this code yet. You should have this in your exercise, but I'm going to walk you through it by just typing it out here. Okay, so first of all, let's get rid of this and run it. So the goal here is to type something to the user, which I'll also be playing the user, then type something back, and it should be associated in a sentence somehow. So the example here is, how old are you? I say 16. And then the computer responds, you're 16 years old. Okay, so the way it works with these type of setups, you can see that over on the right here, the console is now interactive. So if I want to run my program from this type of setup, I run .NET run. Okay, and you see the console.writeLine was run, and how old are you is printed.
So pretty much so far, it's exactly like what we saw in the last lesson, except instead of pressing run and then immediately printing to the console, we press run first to save our code, and then executing .NET run to see it printed.
Exactly. So now I want to read some information from the console. So on the next line here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and then bring this over. Okay.
All right.
Nice. On the next line, I'm going to use a different command called console.readLine. And I'm clicking run down here just to save the code before I actually run it. Okay, let's see what happens. .NET run. Looks like the same, but a little bit different. You notice that every time we return to the terminal, we get this $sign here. That means that the program's over and the computer isn't waiting for us to do anything. In this case, the computer is waiting before it finishes the program. So you can see this cursor here. It's expecting me to type some kind of number like 17 and press return. You can see that now the program's ended. Yeah. 17 was an okay year.
Yeah.
Was it?
I liked 17.
It's okay. It was okay. I didn't know programming, so it wasn't as good as that.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
How far we've come.
Okay, so the point is 17's there. There's some input that the computer has read with this console.readline. Essentially, readline says wait for input. When the user presses enter, capture that input and the program. So we haven't captured the input yet. We've only waited for it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put a variable called string input. So the name of the variable input is just a container for information. We're working with text here, so it's a string type, and that's something common to a lot of programming languages. String just means a string of characters. It's a piece of text.
Yeah. And as we mentioned, C# is a strongly and statically typed language, so we actually are specifying, again, what type of data type should go in there. But I was wondering, Nick, so we're asking them for a number, so why is it going to be a string input? Wouldn't it be something like an integer?
So readline in general takes everything as a string.
Okay.
When I type in this terminal, I could type anything. I could type any set of letters, anything on my keyboard. So it generally assumes, to be safe, it's just going to be all a string. If you want to use it as a number, you can do that work on your own later.
Yeah, which we actually teach you. Trick question.
Yeah.
In a later lesson, we actually go into how to convert between different data types too. So if you want to end up taking in that information as a string, but later converting it to an integer, we teach you how to do that.
You set me up for that.
I know.
I didn't even see that coming.
Ooh.
Okay, so I'm running it one more time. It's again waiting for input. This time I'm going to be 18. Doesn't matter. Again, doesn't look like anything changed. What you can't see is that input now contains this value, this string. Now we're going to do something with it. Console.writeLine. Again, I'm going to print something in the console. Just input here. Just going to capture whatever the input is from the user, print it back out. Okay? Do this again. I'm going to go back to being 17 because it was better. Now it prints it back out, which is great. Input is stored, and then it's printed back out. Now I want to put it within a string. So like, you are 17 years old.
Makes sense. Providing some context to your output is, you know, a good idea when printing things out.
So I'm deleting this, and now I'm going to say, you are input years old. Okay, so again, it's a string. I'm using the quotes. Input is my variable name. Let's see what happens. Do this one more time. See this on the screen? You can't see this on the screen. Yeah.
Should we clear?
Let's do it one more time.
All right.
.NET run. I'm 17. But it says I'm input years old, which is not great. So what we will do is we format the code so that C# knows we're not talking about input the word. We're talking about input the variable.
Yeah.
So what that means is we surround this input word with braces. So those curly braces say, you are, insert 17, years old. And with C# you always need this whenever you're using the braces. So $sign to start, to say, hey, we're going to be using some variables in here. And then we're going to tell you where they are with the braces. Okay. .NET run. 17. You are 17 years old.
There we go. So this stuff isn't covered. A lot of this stuff is actually not covered in this first lesson here. It does come in slightly later lessons, but we wanted to give you a preview of some of the other concepts covered in here as well.
Yeah. So maybe we'll pause for a minute for questions. Looks like we got a couple coming up. I'm gonna make.
Saw a bunch of people talking about Java on here.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, stay on topic.
Making me jealous. Okay, so we talked about, let's see, some Java topics. Got that.
Allie, I'm glad that you find Codecademy more fun and interesting. So do I. I hope we're fun and interesting.
Right, so OOP, object-oriented, you'll hear that a bunch with C# and Java. When I was talking about describing things as objects, and they all do their own functions and they take care of their own concerns, and then objects interact with each other. That's essentially like the paradigm for how we think about programming when we're using C# or Java. It's an advanced concept in terms of like abstract thinking, so we don't jump into that right away. We want people to be able to do something like, say you're 17 years old, which is interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can do just with the very, very basics, and that's actually how we designed this course. We really wanted to get people in writing short programs right away, just so you can feel the power of like being able to code in a new language. And once you get some of that under your belt and you're really familiar with that type of syntax, then next, getting into more abstract concepts like object-oriented programming is the next step. And so that's definitely included in our roadmap for the rest of the courses. Yeah.
So for Justin, that's hopefully that answers one of your questions. That's in the plans. Okay. So Gabriel, by any chance, have y'all done a tally counter and timer from 0? Oh, like I think it means like an application like that.
Oh.
In terms of timers.
Interesting.
Yeah, we have not, but we can explore that for might be an interesting project later on.
Yeah, we haven't even touched any kind of like date time type stuff. All this is a fun shout out. We actually emailed John Skeet, who is well known in the Stack Overflow community. And he did his own, I believe, library of date time features. It's like a better date time feature for C#. And
notorious programming like black hole. It's hard.
Yeah, nice guy. He's excited about daytime stuff, so maybe we can do some daytime stuff. Yeah, definitely something you should cover. William says you can't concatenate using plus in C#. Actually, William, you can. We do have a string concatenation lesson in the working with strings lesson. Did I say that? Exercise in the lesson? But we show you both concatenation and interpolation. And we chose to go with interpolation for our primary means of printing things to the console with variables because we find it's cleaner to read. Nick, maybe you could show us what it would look like to concatenate the same string.
Yes, I would love to.
Awesome. So what we have right up there right now is interpolation, and you know it's interpolation because of the $sign and the curly braces. If we were to change this to a concatenated string, we would need to add in some additional quotation marks and some plus signs, addition symbols. And essentially what it means is we're going to take different strings and concatenate them, put them together. So it's literally like you are string plus input, which the value of that is a string, plus a third string space years old. Now, I have my reasons for using interpolation. What are your thoughts about concatenation versus interpolation?
I prefer interpolation because one, it's harder for me to make mistakes. So for example, with this, you need these spaces in here. I always forget those spaces, which is a pain.
Even just watching you type it out, it was like, oh, it's slower. You're like trying to figure out where does the space need to be, punctuation.
So you kind of see what you get, essentially, if you can imagine the braces being replaced. And that's it for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely welcome to use concatenation. I think it's, sometimes it can be easier on shorter things, but interpolation, especially for like bigger pieces of text, is much simpler. Which you'll see because we have a Mad Libs project, and you're asking for a lot of user input and storing it in a lot of different variables. And if you were to concatenate like the 15 variables or so that were in there, you basically just have more error-prone code. Whereas with interpolation, it can be much cleaner and just more readable.
Yeah. So this is another way of kind of phrasing the same thing. This concatenation version, which is strings with plus signs, is UR space plus the number plus years old. So it should look like the same thing. Let's double check. .NET run 17, and there it is.
Awesome. And it's always good to know both because you may come across documentation, like if you are looking for an answer on Stack Overflow or you're looking at Microsoft's documentation, or I don't know, like if you're on like the Unity documentation site, and they may use concatenation. So yeah, it's good to recognize.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Should we go next?
Yeah, let's go to next.
Okay.
All right, so the next thing that we're going to cover are comments. So comments are a super useful tool when you're learning how to program for two primary reasons. One, we can use comments to document our code, so we can tell people when they first look at it, rather than trying to look through, okay, I'm seeing this console, okay, I think I'm gonna like, maybe it looks like I'm printing something out, taking some input. We can literally just, in a very human, readable way, write out this program, asks for user input to get an age, stores it in a variable, and prints it out to the console, something like that. A second reason for using comments is so we can actually, as we say, comment out part of a piece of code, and that means that we're actually removing it from the program temporarily. So rather than like, you know, we saw Nick in the last one, he actually just cut out a section of code and rewrote it. We could just comment it out so it's still there, but the program isn't going to run it. Cool. So love it to toss it over to everyone out there. What would a good documentation comment be for this program right here? So write something in the chat and we will add it to our program.
Now I'm like really thinking about what I was like at 17. Like really set me down a hole. What's was that in high school?
I was finishing my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
I started college when I was 17.
Oh.
I turned 18 November of my freshman year of college.
Wow.
So that was big, yeah.
Yeah. 17, I was still in LA, and so everything was better. And
all right.
Yeah.
East
That's
Coast
about
for
it.
life.
That's about it. We're in New York, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. No one wants to comment?
Anyone? Any thoughts? Thoughts about comments?
So the idea is just generally, well, the idea is that this one line of information is human readable and summarizes everything. It should be faster for me to read that line of code, understand what's happening, than to understand every single command.
Exactly. And just a quick note about comments. There are two different ways that you can style comments. Here we go. We got some. So I'm going to show the first way, which is going to do a return line and do 2 forward slashes. Nick, read me one of those suggestions from...
Types your age and then displays it with some extra text.
All right. Cool. So as we can already see, what I've just typed out is in a complete and totally different color than anything else in the code editor. It is grayed out like it's not important. And while comments are super important, it's really good practice to comment your code. It's just letting the computer know, and you know, that it's going to get ignored when the program runs. So let's see what happens when our program runs. I'm going to save it. .NET run. How old are you? I'm going to go with 89. Feeling old today. Monday. It's very creaky. And you are 89 years old. Great. We didn't see this section here. Now, if we forget to type these forward slashes, we can see that it changes the color and the syntax highlighting to red, which makes it look like, is it trying to read it as a variable, as something else? We are to try to run it again. Tab up. No?
Just up.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
This cursor isn't on. Yes. I was hoping we would get some errors. Whew. Yeah, we got a lot of errors. So let us know that we didn't actually do this. The build failed. Please fix the build errors and run again. So I'm actually going to show you another way of commenting, which is doing a / and an asterisk. As you may have seen, it just commented everything out. So for this one, we need to put another one on the other side. So then it's asterisk and /. And we can see we got back to our syntax highlighting. Run our code. Boo. Run this again. How old are you? Awesome. There we go. I'm going to clear this.
Thanks, Daniel, for that. Kenji Baby says, this program takes your age, then prints it out. Totally. And Kermit collects input and stores it.
Awesome. So, like we mentioned, the other reason that you would use comments is if you want to take something out of your code briefly, you don't want it to run in your part of your program. So let's try that out with the code that we have here. Can someone in the chat tell me a line of code that we can try taking out?
We make it larger so we can see. Like spread it out.
Like this?
Yeah.
Sick.
Yes. Yeah, I know. It does fun stuff over there.
Ooh, hello console. So yeah, if you can give us like a line number, 10, 11, or 12.
And if you're feeling on top of it, maybe what'll happen when we run it.
Ooh, yeah.
Give it a minute.
Give it a second.
Arrays and loops.
Nick noticed something in the chat.
Yeah.
Arrays and loops.
So Kieran, that is also on our list of things to do. And there's a few things that we want to make sure that get down like the really good basics before we move on to that, but also in the works.
All right, so we've got a couple of suggestions. Nick, which one should go for?
Yeah, let's see here. So Kenjuru says line 9. I think that means I think line 10. We had already
we already commented that out. So yeah,
right.
Sure. Let's try line 10. So I'm gonna do some /.
And it won't ask for your age. So let's see if that shows up.
Okay. There we go.
Nothing.
But our program's still running.
Right.
Why, Nick? I don't know why. I just love asking you questions I already know the answer to. I know. I'm testing you.
So console write line didn't happen clearly. Didn't ask how old you were, Kenji Baby. Exactly right. But it did run, and it's waiting for something. So that console.read line is the command that's linked to this action here. It's waiting for us to enter something so that it can read the line.
And since I don't really know what the context of this is, I don't know, what should I do? I don't know, enter. You are what should I do years old. So automatically we can see the affordances of one, using console.writeLine to provide context to a user experience, but also what happens if we take certain things out of our code that are pretty necessary for that experience.
Yeah. And Kermit brought up something interesting. That's kind of just a fun one. Removing static void. Wonders what will happen.
All right.
So I think this is a fun one because we don't generally want to mess with that. But the point is, this stuff is necessary. We're not quite ready to talk about it because we're still covering the basics. But we'll show you when you do remove it what happens.
All right. So I just commented out static void main. I'm gonna run it. Run this again.
Ooh.
All the errors.
All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
Wow, I've actually never done that.
Yeah, I know. Wait, who suggested that? Kermit the Frog. Yeah, way to think outside the box.
So the point is, it's now interpreting it differently. It's expecting that static void main to know what to do. When that's not there, it sees this curly brace and says, I don't know what to do with that.
Yes, exactly. So someone said, we need the main for the entry point. Yeah, nothing will happen without that. It's looking for that line.
Gotta have a main.
Cool. Yeah, exactly, Kenji Baby. So just like Java, you gotta have a main. So again, as I mentioned earlier in the live stream, we set up the files for you, so you don't need to be concerned about missing something like the main function. It's going to be there. And what you should focus on is what happens between the curly braces in the main function. But you know what? By all means, go out and break stuff. You know, that's like half the fun of programming is trying something and seeing what happens. You'll just learn from it.
Yeah. All this text on the side looks red and scary, but we already learned something new from messing around with it.
Kermit the Frog's already like, oh, sorry, just meant static void. Well, Kermit the Frog, you should try and see what happens by just commenting out static void, and if you just leave main, and you can tell us all about it.
Yeah. So we've covered some basics of C#. Our goal today isn't to tell you how to use C# everywhere, but give you an idea of what the programming language is, what it can do. I want to talk now about why people would use it out in the wild, like out in real jobs, and if people are looking for this. So we'll talk about a few things. One, C# technologies are fast. When we were doing some research, I talked to a few developers, and one of them told me the story about Raygun, which is this testing service, this web service. Essentially, when there are errors in a big app, Raygun, you can buy or use this Raygun service that will check for your errors and give you useful information when it happens. They used to use Node, which was a JavaScript framework, and they noticed things were slowing down a lot. So they switched to a C# framework, .NET, and their speed went up from 1,000 requests per second to 20,000. So that's like what did I write down?
20.
I did the math. 2,000% increase.
That's 2x.
Yeah. C# is meant to run big applications, and you'll see that as you start building bigger and bigger projects. But it works well for big things.
Absolutely. When we were reaching out to people in the C# community, I asked some folks on the Tech Ladies forum, shout out to Tech Ladies, and had a couple of people respond saying that C# is a super popular language for enterprise businesses because they do have, just like such large operations. And the two that I loved the most were Little Caesars and Domino's are big C# houses. And it seems generally just like a lot of places in the Midwest, sort of these larger enterprise companies use C#.
Yeah. So
if you ever want to work at Little Caesars or Domino's, learn C#.
So around that point, written here is C# is employable. So what I mean is people all around the world are looking for C# developers and .NET. And .NET is essentially the group of technologies that you can also use with C# to do things like build websites or mobile apps. So we took a look at some skills reports, HackerRank, Codecademy, we always look at this every year. Two of the C# compatible frameworks, so ASP.NET, .NET Core, those were among the top 10 most sought after by managers in the past year. So a lot of people are looking for this, and learning this information can not only make you a better engineer, can also help you get a job if you...
Yeah, absolutely, which we know is like one of the biggest reasons that folks come to Codecademy is that they're looking to either make a big career switch or they're trying to upskill in their careers. And so if you're trying to be employable, C# is a great language to learn.
Last point, the community is big. It may not seem super useful right when we're talking about read line and write line, but learning a programming language and getting good at it has a lot to do with the community. That's how I know both of us have learned a ton. From things like Stack Overflow and GitHub, where you can talk to people that have learned C# or also going through the same problems, and you can help work through those problems together. And also working together for projects to improve your abilities is great. So GitHub, like I said, GitHub is a really popular place to share code. Stack Overflow, really popular place to talk about questions about code. Those were both in the top 10 most popular languages.
And here at Codecademy, we have our own forms of community. So for our pro learners, we have the Codecademy Lifelong Learners Slack channel, and there's now a C# specific channel in there for folks to talk about, not just the course, but also just the C# programming language in general. And also on our Facebook group, which is all access, open to all learners. Even before this course came out, there was a C# specific chat. So if you're learning C# on Codecademy, there's lots of opportunities to find other people like you and to work on projects together.
Yeah, and for all the folks listening, we'd love to hear what do you want to learn C# for?
Yeah.
Some people want to come on just to learn programming. Some people have a very specific project in mind. We'd love to hear what you're here for.
Yeah, because we're definitely, you know, we're thinking through things. We're imagining what people want to learn. You know, again, mentioning like I wanted to learn C# for Unity, and so being able to keep like that kind of frame in mind while we're developing our content, while also thinking about people who may want it for more business type applications.
Yeah. So ready to go? Yeah.
Yeah. And then we should talk about that editor question too.
Oh yeah.
Oh. Also,
Yeah.
If you haven't taken our Learn How to Code course yet, this may be a first for some of you, but Nick and I really like making interactive web applications to just spice up the learning experience a little. Yeah. So Nick worked with our excellent graphic designer, Tim Ledecky, on building this beautiful animated SVG image that really, you know, captures the excitement and different ways to learn C#. So that's my favorite one.
Shout out to Tim for putting this together and helping me out.
Yeah, it's really, it's beautiful. It's great.
So much fun making it.
So much fun. Couldn't leave without doing that. All right, so look at us. We earned an achievement, Nick.
All right. Yeah. On our own lesson.
On our own lesson.
So we talked about what you can do with C#, interactive games, mobile apps, video games, websites. We mentioned .NET, which kind of, you might hear that out on the internet. That's generally the technologies that you can use with C#. We talked about write line to put output, talk about read line to read input, and comments. So how you describe your code to other people that are going to read it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next part of our live stream, where we're going to talk about our C# challenge, let's look at the chat again briefly.
Okay.
So we saw a question where someone asked, I believe, what kind of editor is right for C#? And this is a fantastic question. So I saw that Kieran already provided an answer. They said Visual Studio Community is a really good IDE for C#, and that's correct. And actually, that's the one that Nick and I recommend too. And in the C# course, we have an entire article that walks you through downloading Visual Studio Community for your proper operating system. So we have videos for Mac users, for Windows users, and we link to an article for Linux users, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. And those videos were produced by
Mike Dane,
who's an awesome coach here at Codecademy. He's also even produced his own YouTube series on learning C#. He's really fantastic. We're happy to work with him. So one of the reasons we included that article is, you know, we really want to get you off platform creating your C# programs as quickly as possible. C#, while you can use it with ASP.NET to build frameworks, it's not, you know, the most browser friendly language in the same way. We're happy we have it in the IDE and you can learn it with us. But when you actually code your C# applications, you're going to do it in something like Visual Studio Visual Studio Community. Excuse me.
So just Google Visual Studio, should come up on a Microsoft website. You can download that. If you get stuck getting set up, just hop on over to Learn C#. And the article, the first article in there, will have that information for you. And that link is in YouTube. In the description. So
just in case it's saying Linux only does VS Code. So VS Code is sort of like a lighter weight version of the Visual Studio IDE. But you can also use VS Code to code in C#. You can just download some packages, my understanding is, for that. Yeah.
So VS Code will work. It has some features that Visual Studio Community doesn't have. But there are other tools that you can use to get that going as well on Linux.
And real quickly, Daniel asked, what about non-pro members, community chat-wise? So again, you can go to the Facebook group for Codecademy. You can just, I think, click a link to ask to join, and one of our awesome admins will approve that. And then if you go on the left-hand side of that page, there should be a chat section, and you can see us C# chat in that. And again, that's for all Codecademy users, no matter what tier pricing you're doing.
Oh,
you do not have Facebook. Well, Fair point.
I understand that choice.
I too understand that choice. So for our non-Facebook users, we have the excellent and long-running Codecademy forums. So on forums, you can post questions. We have some really great moderators on there. And yeah, shout out to forums. Should have mentioned forums in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. What other things can we talk about? Control systems. Matthew Arthur says control systems are moving towards C# right now. I'd love to hear more about that, like specifically what kind of control systems.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's some kind of like maybe security enterprise that's using C#. Gabriel says, I'm trying to learn in general the basics for now, but I do want to start like a tally counter. Right. Okay. So generally building some kind of like utilities applications. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we don't go into this in the current lessons, but like using the date time stuff, you can look that up in the C# documentation and how to do that. But date time will grab specific information about current time of day, current hour, what day of the week it is, anything kind of related to ideas of date and timekeeping.
Yeah.
So you can use that to build a timer.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Let's talk about our
competition.
Let's do it. Woo! Okay. So we're gonna switch back over to our project page. So this project page again is linked in the YouTube channel. You'll find it right below our YouTube video. It's in the description. You can also find it on Codecademy. If you go to the catalog and you look for the Livestreams course, it's featured there. So this project is actually a project that is featured in the course itself. But because projects are only for pro members, we want to make sure that everyone who uses Codecademy can see this project, so we also put it here. And I'm going to toss it over to Nick to explain what the project is.
Sure. So the project is the basis for this competition we're going to describe in a minute. The project generally is building a console creature.
What is a console creature?
Exactly. So we use WriteLine once to type words into the console for a user to read. We can also type, if we can type words, we can type any symbol you see on the keyboard. So this little ghost over here, you can make that in the console. All you have to do is type out those symbols, and if we break this down, it looks like a parentheses, a zero, a space. I'll try one of these lines right now. I already have it copied down here, so I'm just gonna hop on over.
Classic, just
yeah.
Scroll on down.
Okay. So console.WriteLine and this. Okay, so I'm gonna save this here. Now you're gonna see two WriteLine commands and then two lines in the console. One is the head of the ghost, and the other is the eyes. So I can keep going with this, and I'm gonna just do a little something here. We've saved some code and run this, and we can show you a few examples. So the finished ghost looks like up here. Tim Ledecky again. Talented Tim Ledecky helped us out with a few extras. The dancing man.
My favorite.
Yeah. He's got kind of like a little bit of a Michael Jackson vibe. And then a little bit of like, I kind of get some like pilgrim vibes from the hat.
Vibe. I'm seeing like a disco vibe, which I am.
Yeah.
All I can talk about this week is how I'm here for the comeback of disco. So very appropriate.
Dancing Man is here for you.
Dancing Man is my favorite by far. But we've got some other good ones.
The Angry Volcano. And the Superbug. So all of these are just little console creatures. We're going to be talking about like how this plays into the project in a second. I want to, well, no, let's talk about the competition, and I'll talk about some pitfalls about writing this.
Okay, sure. Let's talk about the competition.
Okay, so we would love for all of you to participate in learning C# altogether. If you already have some experience, if you're just new, you can all participate in this. We've just talked about everything you need to know to compete. Essentially what we're going to do is announce after this on Twitter and right here on the live stream the beginning of the competition. We're going to give everyone a week to make their own console creature. Yeah. So, sorry, the ones that Tim made are not, they don't count.
No.
You can send them for sure and share them. We'd love to see them on the internet.
Absolutely.
But for the competition, come up with your own console creature. Whatever you see on your keyboard, you can use to make symbols, make a bunch of right line commands, and build out your creature. So work on that. You can use either the editor here or, like we talked about, Visual Studio on your own computer. Write out the code, make sure it works, run it, take a photo of what you have, your very own console creature, and then copy the code and share it. And put those together in a tweet. Let us know at Codecademy, and we'll pick the winner next week.
Awesome. So to share the code with us, please do not tweet out all of your code. I don't think it's even possible, even though they've doubled the limit. But we're going to be using something called Gist, which is a GitHub product. And basically, all you need to do is you can go in and even right here from the LE, select all of your code, copy paste it, go to this create gist, which I believe we have linked to in the description, and paste it right here. You can give us a gist description, my cool console creatures, give it a file name, we're gonna call it program.cs, and you can see now it knows it's a C# file, gave us all of our fancy syntax highlighting, and then we can create we wanna create a public gist, so that it can be viewable. And then all you need to do is you can just come up to your browser, copy it, throw it in a tweet.
With your image?
With your image.
Tag
do a little
us.
screenshot of your final product, and then, tag us in your tweet. And we're going to be running this competition throughout the week until next Monday. And as submissions come in, Codecademy is going to be tweeting them out to all of our followers on Twitter. So if you really show us some cool stuff, you know, a lot of different people in the world are going to see what you've made. And then we're going to be announcing some winners on Monday on our Twitter.
With the chance to win some cool swag.
Some cool swag.
Yes.
We've got some great Codecademy swag.
We'll send you some swag.
Yeah.
So, what do I want to talk about? Okay, I just want to make sure that everyone knows this gist thing, because this is new. We've done a competition like this sort of before. What we did is just, you can find it, just GIST is going to be somewhere online.
Somewhere on the internet, but it'll be one of the first search results.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I figured that's all I had to say. I just had to
Just Google Gist, it'll come up. GitHub is this kind of popular website, you know.
Yeah. If you know anyone, you're gonna know Gist.
Yeah.
No.
So
it's not a common thing. It's totally fine if you don't know how to use it, but the link is in the project. So just do as we did, copy, paste, add your name and title, and share that link.
Yeah. So seeing some questions come through, which is great. So yes, you will need a GitHub account in order to create your Gist, but we personally think as educators and as programmers, having a GitHub account is a really important first step into committing to being a developer, having a development practice. So GitHub is where you can share your code. It's where you can participate in the open source community. It's where you can find great projects and documentation. So if this is your first time signing up for a GitHub account, congratulations. It's a really important, again, first step in becoming a developer.
Yeah.
Someone did mention, do you need Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy if someone wants to email me their code instead because they don't want to be on social media. Like, mad respect, self-care y'all. But you can email me at zoe@codecademy.com and I will tweet your project for you.
If you don't want to put it online, we'll do it for you.
We'll do it for you if you want to participate.
Just let us know if you want your name mentioned or not.
Yeah, exactly. What's the privacy level there?
Yeah.
Matthew Arthur asks, can you print any ASCII character to the console?
Yeah, so that's a little trick that one of the pitfalls I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so let's go back to the project and talk about some of the pitfalls, little weird things with C#, with all of these ASCII characters. So bounce over here, open this up. Okay, so...
Dancing Man's a good one to look at.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna do
Always a good one to look at,
Always.
but particularly for this conversation.
I'm gonna... Okay, so first,
here.
yeah, on line 18, you can see that there's 4 backslashes here to represent the arm of Dancing Man, but there's only 2 that show up in the terminal. So why is that? So that's a particular C# thing that I'm going to describe right now. I'm going to just delete this real quick and we come back to it. So if I try to print one of those backslashes, let's just see what happens. Maybe we can uncover this mystery. Oops. Yes. Okay, so I'm trying to do just 1 backslash in quotes because it's text. Something weird happens. So the particular thing about C# is backslashes within a string have their own meaning. In C#, they use, like, what if you wanted to add a quote inside a quote, or certain characters that are special to C#? Yeah. You use the backslash to...
It wouldn't even let me.
Yeah, no.
It was like, nah, Zoe.
Yeah.
Nah.
Okay, so, yeah, let's run that and see what happens.
Okay, so now, yeah, I added 1 little quotation mark inside of here. Save it.
Now just 1 quote
It's
comes
fine.
up.
So if I do a second one, though.
Again, the error. So for all of those special characters, you need a backslash to say whatever comes after this backslash is special, and literally print that. So that's how you get quotes if you wanted to use quotes in your console creature. And if I wanted to do a backslash like I originally did, it'd have to be backslash. So this should print just 1 backslash. Okay, so now we're comfortable with that. Let's hop back to the Dancing Man and see what happens here. So in here, these spaces matter, by the way, for spacing, obviously. There's 4 of these backslashes, but only 2 that show up. And that's because the first one escapes, what we call escapes the second one, and the third one escapes the fourth one. And in the end, C# says, okay, you want me to literally print 2 backslashes. And that's what happens.
Here we go.
So while you're doing this project, run it often to make sure that everything's showing up as you want. Use spaces and careful with those backslashes.
Yep. All right. Some more questions came up while we were in here. So I'm just going to skip down to Matthew Arthur's for a second and come back to Brian. So is it based on the creativity of the character or the programming approach or both? I mean, definitely looking for some creative applications here. You know, sometimes programming is super straightforward, and even if you're using it for, let's say, business-oriented purposes, it's still really fun to, you know, do something wacky and wild occasionally with it. So that's part of it. You know, it's something that's kind of accessible, and, you know, kids can participate. But yeah, if, you know, there's not too much that you need to do in terms of what the programming approach is, because it's mostly console.writeline, but, you know, if you figure out something fancy, you know.
Yeah, to I think make it, we haven't talked about this, but to make it fair, I think programming any like fancier approach, say with like arrays and loops, is totally acceptable, but we're not gonna like prefer that over others to make it fair, because some people that are coming to this that know just WriteLine, what we've taught today, should be able to compete on an equal playing ground.
Absolutely, but yeah,
playing field.
You feel free to use it, but not part of the actual judging criteria.
Yeah.
Don't plagiarize.
Oh, don't plagiarize. Very good. Thank you, man behind the curtain, Alex Kuntz. There's a lot of different ASCII art out there, but, you know, come up with something that's truly original to you.
Yeah. Okay, can it be a creature or can it be an object? I think creature is a loose term.
Yeah.
I think we're looking for something that you would recognize as a creature.
But I mean, you know, Brave Little Toaster is one of my favorite movies.
Yes. So
like, that's like a creature object kind of hybrid thing.
Angry Volcano.
Angry Volcano.
Object, but he has feelings too.
Yeah, it's pretty simple to really transform an object into a creature by just adding some eyes. Really, it's only eyes. Maybe a mouth.
Yes.
Nose if you're fancy. So just think about what like objects with googly eyes look like on them. Immediately turned into funny creatures.
So almost out of time, but before we go, we'll answer a few more questions. Don't forget to leave some feedback. We'd love feedback at Code Academy.
Absolutely.
That's how we get better, and we also want to hear your thoughts. So at the bottom of the description in the YouTube link, leave your comments.
Yep.
Or sorry, within that feedback form, leave your comments on that form.
Right. There's a specific feedback form that will be posted to the YouTube channel.
Yes.
My understanding. I'm looking at Alex because he knows these things.
It's in the YouTube description.
In the description.
In the description, and was just added to the chat. So please leave us feedback there.
Or comment on the YouTube video.
Or comment on the YouTube video. And just to wrap things up, again, this is the just first small portion of content that we are going to be releasing on C#. We have loads more content coming your way. So yes, to answer Brian's question, we do plan expanding the course to more advanced topics. And you should be on the lookout for those. You know, if you're ever curious about what Codecademy is up to, we have weekly email drops with our new courses in them. Sometimes we post to Twitter or a blog, so we'll let you know when new content comes out.
Yeah. Any other last question? Ooh, animation. Are you looking at the backslash?
Oh my, what? Oh, I was looking at the backslash one. I totally agree. That's how I felt too. I'm so excited to see an animation.
Yeah.
People can figure out ASCII animations. Woo! If you can make Dancing Man dance.
I would love to see
I would love to see that. That will be my GIF for the longest
You're here
time.
for that GIF.
I'm here for that GIF. Okay, cool. All right, everyone. I think that's a wrap. Remember, participate in the competition. Post your work on Twitter, or again, email it to me, Zoe@codecademy.com, and I will post it for you with any relevant information that you so wish for me to include. And thank you again for stopping by today and for taking our C# course. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.